and welcome to Not Another Cavs Podcast, the show for diehard Cavs fans, NBA degenerates, and basketball chaos enthusiasts. My name's Zach from Zach Gets Ball on the internet, which you've never heard of because for some reason I thought it was a good idea to change my name and launch a podcast all at the same time. I'm your host, though, of this new Cavs-centric NBA podcast. On today's show, awards for the Cavs for the past week. Darius Garland's impact. My answer to last episode's Who You Got question, LeBron versus Jordan. And we're going to do our first Who Says No with fake LaMelo trades. Subscribe, follow, leave reviews, comments, likes, all of those things. And let's get into this. Today, we're going to give out 5 awards to Cleveland Cavaliers for their performances over the past week. These awards will have silly, stupid names, and that's going to make sense in, I don't know, like 10 seconds when we start. The first award that we're going to give away is the I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul award for Play of the Week. How about Evan Mobley blocking Kawhi with his offhand and then coming down within the same sequence and catching a wayward lob from Donovan Mitchell and guiding it in with the same offhand. This is the type of play that he's capable of when he's not thinking. He's just reacting. And that's kind of a rare place for him to be, it seems, at the beginning of this season. It seems like he's kind of overthinking a lot on the offensive end of the floor. When he's just reacting, he's kind of superhuman. He's been playing throughout the start of the year like a guy who, and I've said this before on other places, he's playing like a guy who has heard all summer long that the Cavs can't get to where they want to go unless he's the best player on the team. Plays and sequences like this is the kind of shit that makes it feel like that's actually possible. But I would still argue that it doesn't have to be done the same way every time. Like, you can develop Mobley's offensive game while getting him the ball within an action and still letting him create from there instead of just throwing the ball to him on the wing and saying, go cook. But that is not the point of this particular part of the conversation. The point of this particular part of the conversation is about saying what a hell of a play he made within the same sequence. He made 2 ridiculous plays on their own, and he did it together. Just insane. The next award we're going to do is the With No Regard for Human Life performance of the week. And this is going to be Donovan Mitchell against the Clippers. 37 points in 33 minutes, where the Cavs outscored the Clippers by 26 in those 33 minutes. It's one of those games where you're reminded that while he's not going to be in those MVP conversations with guys like Nikola Jokic, with guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, with guys like Luka, because the counting stats just aren't going to keep up with those dudes who are kind of the modern day version of what heliocentric basketball was, whatever that was. That craze was like 7 years ago, I guess. Getting old. This is very gray. If you're watching, it's very gray. He had 5 threes in this game. He moved up to 5th all time on the Cavs 3-point shooting list. He also rounded it out with 8 rebounds and 6 assists. And that's the kind of thing that, again, for him, 37, 8, and 6 is a very well-rounded box score. And that's why he doesn't get to be in those conversations. But when you're talking about impact on a team, when you're talking about the ability to just take orange ball, put it in orange hoop, when you're talking about like elevating a franchise, like, he's still on that short list, that upper tier of what he's been able to do for Cleveland since getting there just like 3 short years ago. And this is the time for him to get Do the kids still say flowers? I feel like they don't. That's not probably not a thing anymore. Whatever you're supposed to get, that's what he should get. And it's also proof that this wasn't one of those tunnel vision games. We've seen those too, right? Those everybody stand around and watch Spider cook. That's not what this was. It was just a fantastic all-around game and a really strong win for the team. It was one of the best looking flows that they've been in offensively since the season started, and it all, centers around him. Or not that's actually a really dumb phrase. It all centers around him. No, he should be at the center and everything should be revolving around him. Wasn't that the point of heliocentric back in the day anyways? I am vastly off topic. Okay, next award. It's time to exercise these demons. These motherfuckers are doing jumping jacks now for game of the week with the win over the Indiana Pacers. We can't really call it a revenge game because with Tyrese Halliburton sitting on the sidelines in street clothes, they've been terrible to start the season record-wise anyways. But it definitely did feel like the Cavs were exercising some demons from the playoffs, particularly Darius Garland. Um, he, I remember for whatever reason, I remember him hitting a like a sidestep three over Andrew Nemhart, and he did his normal 3-point celebration, where he like makes the with his hand and he kisses it, and he usually is, doing it up to the crowd and like, oh, check this out. He did that shit right in the direction of Andrew Nemhart, and it just looked on his face like, I can't stand that mother right there. I don't like that guy. And it just felt like he was getting something out because, especially for him, because so much of that series going the wrong way for Cavs fans really has kind of landed on that toe of his and him just not being mobile at all when he was available to play against them. And it had to feel good, at least in the moment, to let a little bit of that out and just feel a little bit of vindication, even though the stage is completely different. The success of the team on the other side completely different, but still like 5% satisfying, right? Next award we're going to do is the get 'em little elbow throwing wannabe Jokic looking motherfucker, get 'em laugh of the week. And this is Jarrett Allen, the poster that should have been over Alperen Şengün. And the reason that this is so laughable is that not only in the moment did you laugh out loud when you saw it happen, when you saw him just cock back and yam that thing on Alperen Şengün's head, who's become just one of the favorites for Cavs fans to watch play basketball for all the right reasons. Seeing his face in the slow-mo replays as he's flopping and flailing about. But the reason that it's particularly laughable is that in a league, when an offensive player can lower the shoulder and just use their elbow, push off, just truck guys into the first row to create their own space, they're allowed to take 6 steps and everybody calls it a gather online because nobody knows what a travel means anymore. They can carry the ball on literally every possession. I heard the argument one time. Well, I didn't hear it. I read it because that's how the internet works when you're reading comment sections because you hate humanity or yourself, perhaps. Somebody said that on this play that went around, this highlight that went around of Giannis just taking like 18 steps down the lane, somebody was like, no, it still counts as a gather. He's allowed to take as many steps as he wants while he's still dribbling, and he's still dribbling because the ball is spinning in his palm. If the ball is spinning in your palm, you're palming the basketball. That's a carry. But that's just not how it works in 2026. But that's totally fine. All of that Totally fine. But Jarrett Allen using his arm to shield himself from a defender while absolutely posterizing the shit out of him while he's flopping and also being a grifter. Just his whole existence of Alperen Şengün, that's an offensive foul. Laughable. Laughable. Laughable place to be in the NBA. The final award that we're going to do today is the Welcome Back, Welcome Back, Welcome Back Cav of the week, and that is Darius Garland, Darius Garland comes back into the lineup and makes everything for the Cavs look like it makes sense. And that's why we're going to spend some more time on him today. And we're going to get into some numbers here in just a little bit. But let's start with the optics, just the eye test, just the real true ball knower stuff. They need a facilitator that puts pressure on the rim. And there is not a single one on this Cavs roster that does that other than Darius Garland. And I want to make that very clear what I mean. Donovan Mitchell gets to the rim. Donovan Mitchell isn't going to the rim as a facilitator. He may kick out. He may make a dump off pass. He's not a selfish player. That's not what I'm saying. But when Donovan Mitchell is going to the rim, his intent is to score the basketball. And if he does kick out or dump off, it's because he's reacting to the defense trying to stop him from scoring the basketball. Darius Garland goes to the rim thinking pass and facilitate for others. You can tell that because he gets so deep sometimes that he couldn't score at all, even if he wanted to, because he's put himself literally under this basket and like nearly at the stanchion falling out of bounds as he's doing one of those wraparound passes to the corners. Or he does that like around the back of the defense to dump it off to the big on the block, because that's what he went in there trying to do, and he had to get that deep to get his angle. Nobody else on the Cavs is doing that, because you still have to respect him as a scorer, because if you don't, yeah, he could stop, a step shorter than that and go ahead and just lay the ball in. He's got a floater that's sick. So he can score when he gets in there. Sometimes he does go in there looking to score, but a lot of times he's going in there in that point guard mentality. I was listening to the Zach Lowe show and somehow getting through the segment. Well, truthfully, I didn't get through the whole thing, but I had gotten this far into the segment where Bill Simmons was his guest, and I have a feeling that Bill Simmons is going to come up again later on this show at some point in time. Yeah, because I'm going to snipe at Bill Simmons and anybody's going to care. No, that's not the point, but he did do something that is probably going to come up in a conversation that we're going to have here in a little bit. But on this particular segment, they were talking about Chris Paul announcing his retirement. The conversation that they were having is that Chris Paul is kind of the last of the pure point guard. That archetype isn't really existent in today's NBA. It's pretty much combo guards playing lead guard, right? They're a lot of score first, facilitate second. You're getting kind of more playmaking and facilitating from bigger guys. You're getting more point forward stuff in today's NBA than you are like pure point guard stuff. And when they were talking about that, they were like, the last guy that really fits or has any kind of like harkening back to the point guard of old, the Magics through the Isaiahs through the Chris Pauls, I guess I'll use archetype again. The last one standing at this point is Darius Garland. And they were talking about him in that light, and they're not wrong at all. They also mentioned Tyrese Halliburton, but since he's in street clothes and he kind of looks different when he's doing it, it doesn't fit. Tyrese Halliburton is a little bit more in that like Steph, get off the ball, move, get back on the ball kind of stuff. Not the point of this segment. The point of this segment is more about Darius Garland and him and his facilitating chops and his play style, where he can turn the corner on his own. He can run pick and roll. He puts pressure on the rim and he facilitates like a genius when doing that. He truly is masterful with his passing ability, and they need that desperately on this team. They also need another threat on the perimeter, and he is absolutely that. When the whole defense can essentially focus on Donovan Mitchell and he's the only perimeter player that anybody gives a shit about, like the offense just grinds to a halt because there's not really other threats. You can tell me, yeah, Sam Merrill can shoot. Yes, he absolutely can, but he hasn't played in a couple of games now, and there's not. And when he gets the ball, he's not treated like somebody that's going to hurt you with the ball. He's treated like a shooter. And sometimes he can burn you. If you get overzealous on the closeout, he can, take a dribble or two and make a play, but I don't have to qualify this shit, right? Like, what I'm talking about. When Darius Garland is in there, it's a whole other dynamic. It's a whole other dimension to this offense, and everything else makes sense. And speaking of dynamic, he is that dynamic presence because he can do it all. He shoots the lights out. He can make plays for others. He can finish. He can make floaters. He can get to the lane. He can break somebody down off the dribble. He can draw two. He is a dynamic presence that they otherwise don't have outside of Donovan Mitchell on the perimeter. And it's what you hope that Lonzo can rise to as he gets more familiar in this offense. But the problem with Lonzo right now is, one, he can't shoot, and two, he's not doing anything north-south. It's all east-west. And that's a more predictable thing to guard against than what Darius Garland is to try to guard, and he's completely unpredictable. When Darius Garland is in the lineup, when Darius Garland plays, guys seem to move more. The ball seems to move more. Everything about this Cavs offense falls into place. People go more into their natural roles. Donovan Mitchell gets to be more score first off ball guy. Evan Mobley gets to be more within the flow finisher, but still have opportunities to create if you actually give him the ball, which is a topic for probably next episode. I think I'm working on looking some stuff up for that. But yeah, he comes in and everything just looks better. It looks more like the Cavs offense that we saw last year when they were the best offense in basketball. And I pulled a few of these numbers from Data Baller, which is a new site. At least I think it's new. I hadn't seen other people referencing this thing online until like this season. And so if it's been around a while, people hadn't gravitated towards it yet. But now it is kind of cool. It's a pretty simple dashboard and a pretty straightforward like visualization for data nerd stuff. So, whatever, plug for them. They don't know I exist. In just 80 minutes going into the Clippers game, which is a super small sample size and takes out some garbage time, the Cavs had an offensive rating of 135 with Darius Garland on the floor. Not only is that almost 18 points better than what they are without him on the floor this year, it's also more than 12 points better than what NBA Stats has Houston's offensive rating at, which is the best in the NBA. Their net rating was nearly 29, which is just ridiculous. 24 points better than when he's off the floor, flirting with double what OKC's net rating was going into that Clippers game. He played a bulk of those minutes with Evan Mobley, like 63, again, without garbage time. And this is where the presence of Darius Garland is most felt to me, because I think that Evan Mobley is the guy that benefits the most from having Darius Garland out there. Maybe a little bit of Jarrett Allen too. Unfortunately, we gotta get guys healthy at the same time. That would be cool. But when I mentioned earlier that Evan Mobley gets to go more into play finisher, at least more frequently, a more natural thing for him to do, it's also less like trying to square peg round hole Evan Mobley into this guy you that feels like he has to create off the dribble, which doesn't have to be what it is, at least from a standstill. And with Darius Garland, you feel that. You at least have the chance for him to set him up and get him something easier more often to get him into a little bit more of a flow. He just looks better with Darius Garland on the floor with him. And it's reflected in the numbers. Again, going into that game, because this is when I pulled it first, and then I've got some other numbers for after it. Their offensive rating with those two on the floor together was 138 and a half with a net rating of plus 37. NBA Stats has their plus and minus as a duo at 49 in their total minutes with garbage time and everything else in it, and a net rating of almost 28 per 100 possessions with 135 offensive rating, which all of that is just basically saying, holy shit, the offense is great when these two play together. The duo's effective field goal percentage is 61%, true shooting 65. I mean, all the numbers at this sample size are fairly useless, and that's why I left them in here from when I originally pulled them and then pulled more numbers later. But it's illuminating, I think, just how starkly impactful Darius Garland has been and how incredible the offense has looked in just the brief micro moments that we've got to see it with Darius Garland. And so I pulled it again after the Clippers game, and he didn't play against Toronto. So all of these are still current. He didn't play well against the Clippers on his own as just an individual player. They still, in totality, 131 offensive rating and a plus 13, which is 13 points better than when he's not on the floor. A 20 net rating, which is 14 points better than when he's not on the floor. And with Evan Mobley, still 135 offensive rating, which is just ridiculous. 20 points better than without those two guys, and plus 30, almost 32 net rating. So even after a subpar Darius Garland game against the Clippers individually, he's still massively impactful for this team. And just, it's like the moment that you plug him into this offense, everything else is elevated. And we see the team that we all had so much fun watching and rooting for last year. You see the movement, you see the flow, you see one of the best offenses in basketball. All right, so this is a new segment on the podcast. We are going to do something that you've never heard ever in the history of basketball discourse. Who says no? I'm going to give you 3 guesses as to what we're going to talk about. Not specifically. Well, I said it at the open if you were paying attention. But this is where we talk trades around the NBA. Some could be Cavs related. Some could just be rumors that are out there. And today I'm getting an assist from Bleacher Report, who had these in an article that I was reading, and I just wanted to share my thoughts. This is in reaction to the news that we got, and then kind of walked back a little bit by LaMelo Ball. But basically, LaMelo Ball saying he's frustrated in Charlotte and open to a trade. And then the internet went crazy trying to figure out where to trade LaMelo Ball, and hence you find articles like this. And I thought that it had some, there was kind of a little bit of everything that I think is kind of right and wrong with trade discourse in NBA conversations online right now. So I thought it was a good example and a fun little segment that we could do. So we're going to start with the first trade that was presented, and that is with the Blazers, LaMelo Ball for Jeremy Grant, Scoot Henderson, and a first-round pick. So it works under the CBA. So that's the first thing that you got to check. And this is where I'm going back to what I was talking about earlier with Bill Simmons. When somebody like Bill Simmons, with the massive platform that he has, starts throwing out fake trades on the internet, that are not legal, and yet his audience does not understand the CBA. At least a ton of them don't understand the CBA. You end up with dudes on Twitter trying to go at Keith Smith like he doesn't know the rules because Bill Simmons can't be bothered to use a trade machine that's actually accurate. And it's so frustrating because Bill Simmons at this point he's built this podcasting media empire, right? And he is beyond the point where he needs to grind the tape and get all of the little details right. Although I think that in these types of cases, there should be somebody, whether it's a producer for the show, somebody should be checking to make sure that if we're going to do this segment or if he's going to post this on Twitter, like, look at this. This is a great Who Says No, wonderful debate topic. The damn trade should be legal. And by the way, he's not taking all the blame here. ESPN, if you're not going to update your trade machine to reflect the league rules, then you should take the damn thing down because all it's doing is causing people to argue on the internet over stupid shit. Now, for the trade itself, use Spot Track, by the way. It's the most accurate trade machine that I've seen. I know some people have claimed Fanspo. I am not going to I don't have a reason right now to refute Fanspo, but I do feel most confident in Spot Track. For the trade itself, though, I don't actually hate this trade. It's almost like this one should be held for last because I think it's the best trade on the board that we're going to talk about. And again, I'll repeat because I went on a diatribe there. It's LaMelo for Jeremy Grant, Scoot Henderson, and a first-round pick. I don't like it really for Portland so much, but I think that the idea itself makes some sense for them. They do get a talent upgrade. He does still match the timeline of the team. And if anyone at all on the planet is going to help LaMelo become a professional, it's Drew Holiday. And if it's not Drew Holiday, it might be Dame Lillard, who he might respect more. And he has both of them in Portland. So while I still don't think it would work, if anything could work, that would be it, in my opinion. And so I do think that the reason that I don't think that it makes a ton of sense for Portland, one is because I'm not in the LaMelo Ball business, but also because I think the availability is a huge concern for any team trying to trade for him, especially a team that is starting to at least gain a little bit of that, like a little bit of that momentum of like young teams starting to show some, some promise and people are starting to have some expectations of improvement from them. And they're kind of like just good enough to be entertaining and fun and competitive at this point in time. And I think if you bring in a guy like LaMelo Ball, you don't have that identity anymore. You have the LaMelo Ball show. And I don't like that for Portland personally, but I at least understand where the thought process would be coming from. For Charlotte, on their side, they do still get to take a swing on Scoot Henderson's potential, and he gets to develop somewhere that doesn't have any delusions at all about winning basketball games. So I think that that's a plus. Plus, you get a pick in that. Going back to the core of the segment, though, who says no? I think it's probably Charlotte, and I think it's probably because they think that they should be able to get more picks out of LaMelo than one first rounder, but I think it's as good as you could realistically get, in my opinion. So they might be. I think they would probably say no, but I think they might be wrong in doing so, I guess. So the next trade on the board was with the LA Clippers. It was LaMelo Ball for John Collins and Derek Jones Jr., plus Cam Christie and a first. So my take on this is, again, it's a legal trade. I don't get it for Charlotte, personally. The Clippers are in panic mode for their future. They're old as hell. They are hurt. They are off to a terrible start. They do not own their pick. Who knows what penalties are still to come from the cap circumvention and Kawhi and all the tree planting chaos. LaMelo Ball gives them a young star to sell tickets and the glimmer of hope that they probably would just cling to, that their future isn't completely desolate. So I understand why you would do this if you are the Clippers. But for the Hornets, while I think it's a bit poetic that your reward for enabling LaMelo Ball's worst habits because he's famous would be to trade for a guy who's only famous for always being in trade rumors and on the trade block, and that first in 2032 is like just a whole other lifetime from now in NBA years, you at least feel like you got something for your troubles, maybe. But again, if when we go back to the who says no portion of this conversation, I think it's Charlotte. I think the Portland deal that I mentioned earlier is a better one for them. And if I'm going to guess that they would say no to that, then I think they'd say no to this definitely. Um, but in this case, I agree with them because in this case, you don't have that young guy to kind of replace LaMelo in the timeline and development alongside of the future first round pick. You just get salary stuff. The next trade on the board was with the Miami Heat. I saw a few ideas in the article for this. I'm going to start with this one. It's LaMelo Ball for Andrew Wiggins, Nikola Jovic, and a first round pick. They also tossed out the idea of swapping Tyler Hero or Rozier in for Wiggins and adjusting the picks accordingly. By the way, still no word as of recording this from the NBA about whether they actually can trade Terry Rozier with his legal troubles from, the whole gambling and mafia stuff. But alas, just throwing that out there. My take on this one is that I don't even care about the mechanics of this one. I think that it would be hilarious to see LaMelo Ball within Heat culture and how long it would take. What would the over under be on how long it would take for Pat Riley to retire or commit murder? If you were compiling a list of guys who would be the absolute worst players to go to Miami, LaMelo Ball might be at the top of that list. LaMelo, Ja, Zion, who else? Trae Young. Probably not going to be great there. I don't know. I don't see that fit being a positive in any aspect at all. Putting LaMelo in Miami and with that organization, just recipe for disaster, in my opinion. If you're the Hornets, you might like Nikola Jovic or Jovic. I am still not 100. I feel like I've never gotten it right with him about it being Jovic or Jovic. I'm an idiot, I guess. You also might prefer, if you're the Hornets, to do this with Terry Rozier's contract, if you can do it. Like I said, no word from that, whether that's going to be allowed or not. And then take as many picks as you can and then just waive Terry Rozier. Although, how ironic would it be if the Hornets traded to bring Rozier back with this whole thing going on? Maybe they should just stay away on that particular principle. But honestly, at this point, if you're the Hornets, if you're able to plug him in and get more picks, that's probably more important at this point in time, especially if you're just going to waive the guy. So, I don't know. Who says no? I think it's probably Miami in this case. Maybe I'm crazy, but I don't think they'd want to be in the LaMelo Ball business. given what that organization stands for. I know we've seen them before take guys that wouldn't, traditionally one of the poster children for this, right, is Shaq. Like, who's most unheat culture than Shaq? But Shaq's also Shaq, not LaMelo. The kids are not going to understand why that's different, but alas, here we are. The final trade on the board here is with the Dallas Mavericks, and this is where things get stupid. Anthony Davis for LaMelo Ball, Grant Williams, Liam McNeely, and 2 first-round picks. And my initial reaction to this was, why the hell would the Hornets want AD? And for that being my first reaction, that's probably exactly why they would want AD, since they're kind of a disaster, which makes me sad because a couple of my favorite musicians are actually part of a minority owner group. But man, they have been just directionless, and nothing would say we have no vision than trading for Anthony Davis at this point in time. That being said, this is why you check the rules, because this trade also doesn't work under the CBA, because the Mavs are a first different team and would be hard capped there, and this wouldn't actually go through. Again, use the spot track trade machine when you're doing your fake trades. So who says no? The NBA. All right, we're going to wrap up today's show doing a follow-up from the last episode. I said I would do this. When I introduced Who You Got as the hypothetical one-on-one current player, it's usually going to be current player versus a legend, then I said I would introduce again, I'm recapping and reminding you what the heck happened in the last episode. So this doesn't feel like it's coming out of nowhere, because that's what you're supposed to do, I guess, when you're hosting shows. There really aren't any rules. I'm doing this. I'm talking to myself. Anyways, so the idea here was to take a current NBA player, hypothetical matchup against a legend, both in their primes, who would win specifically in a one-on-one game. So I set it up in the last episode by saying the first one that we would do is LeBron versus Jordan. You go find that on my social media, give your take, and I would give mine in the next episode. The next episode is here, and that's what we're doing. So for my take on the first Who You Got, LeBron versus Jordan, hypothetical one-on-one matchup, this isn't about accolades. This isn't about accomplishments. It's not about records or rings. This is about these two players, if they were both in their prime, who would win if you rolled the ball out and said first to 11, one-on-one, who are you going to choose? LeBron is my GOAT. But in a one-on-one setting, I've got MJ. Because what makes LeBron great happens within a team setting. It's always making the right basketball play. Remember how much heat he took in late game situations when he would drive to the rim, draw a crowd, and kick it out to somebody who would then miss a 3 at the buzzer, and then it would be, LeBron doesn't have the killer mentality. Jordan and Kobe would take that shot. Yeah, they would. They would force that shot. LeBron's never been that guy. He's always been the make the right play type of a basketball brain. He's the kind of guy that sees things on the floor before anybody else sees, or that nobody else sees. He's the guy that's always been about setting up his teammates. He's always been more Magic than Jordan in that way. He's the kind of guy that knows the other team's playbook better than they do. There have been those instances where guys have come out, not LeBron saying this, because he does have, the ability to come out and say this stuff, and people would be like, he's lying. No, guys on other teams have come out on podcasts and said shit like, yeah, we were going to run this play, and LeBron was like, hey, you're in the wrong spot. You're supposed to be over there, to the team that was running the play, because he knew it better than they did. Can he get a bucket against anybody guarding him? at any given time? Sure, I believe that wholeheartedly. I don't think there is a single human being on planet Earth that's ever existed that could just straight up guard LeBron in a situation where LeBron's like, I got to get this bucket. I don't think that human being exists. However, that's not what makes him the GOAT. That is what MJ lives for wholeheartedly. His entire game was built on the basic principle of you can't guard me. And it was true. Absolutely true. Nobody could guard him. He wasn't out there to elevate his teammates. He wasn't out there to facilitate for others. He wasn't out there for anything other than, I am better than you. I am going to beat you. How many of the greatest highlights you've ever seen in your life are, and I don't mean how many Jordan highlights, how many of the greatest I mean the greatest basketball highlights you've ever seen are Michael Jordan scoring on 2 dudes, 3 dudes, 4 dudes, centers, forwards, guards. Doesn't matter. He was going to get that bucket no matter what was happening. And he was going to just out talent you to get said bucket. And that's what it takes to win a game of one-on-one. That's why I would take Michael Jordan in a hypothetical who you got matchup one-on-one versus LeBron James. That's it for this episode of Not Another Cavs podcast. You made it to the end. Congratulate yourself, or go through the requisite self-loathing because you've made it to the end of this episode. Whatever is most fitting for you. My name's Zach. Subscribe if you want more Cavs content, NBA chaos, and more of my nonsense. See you next time.